If a man is on your mind all the time, something has already shifted. Not just in you, in him. You think you're the only one replaying conversations, the only one checking your phone, the only one wondering why his name keeps floating into your thoughts at the most inconvenient moments. But here's what you haven't considered. The fact that he lives in your head like this isn't random. It's a response. And by the end of this, you're going to understand the one change that has already happened inside him. The one he may not even fully understand yet. Because when someone occupies that much mental space, it usually means something invisible has already started moving beneath the surface. And you feel it. You feel it when you wake up and your brain checks for him before your feet even touch the floor. You feel it when you're halfway through a conversation with someone else, and suddenly you wonder what he would think about it. You feel it when a song comes on and you don't even know why, but your chest tightens just slightly. You tell yourself you're just overthinking. You tell yourself maybe you're just bored. You tell yourself you need to calm down. But what you don't say out loud is this: why does it feel mutual, even when he's not here? Why does it feel like there's something happening between you, even in silence? And why does part of you feel strangely certain that you're not alone in this? You replay his tone. You analyze the pauses. You zoom in on tiny shifts in his energy. The way he looked at you that one time. The way his voice softened unexpectedly. The way he seemed almost distracted, but not in a distant way, in a pulled-in way. And here's where it gets interesting. When someone is on your mind constantly, it usually means your brain has registered unfinished emotional business. Unresolved tension creates mental loops, and tension doesn't form in a vacuum. It forms between two people. You're not obsessing over a man who feels nothing. You're looping around a dynamic that hasn't closed. Because when there's no spark, no shift, no activation, your mind moves on. It doesn't camp there. It doesn't circle. It doesn't replay. The fact that you can't fully settle tells you something inside the connection hasn't settled either. And that unsettled energy doesn't just live in you. It lives in him, too. He may not be analyzing it the way you are. Men often don't sit around decoding their emotions in the same way. But that doesn't mean they're not feeling something. It just means it shows up differently. And here's the first shift that's already happening inside him. You've interrupted his emotional baseline. Before you, he had a rhythm. His thoughts moved in predictable patterns. Work, friends, habits, distractions. And then you showed up. And suddenly, there's this interruption. You cross his mind at random times, not constantly, not in the same obsessive way you experience it, but unexpectedly, while he's driving, while he's scrolling, right before he falls asleep. You become a mental flash. And those flashes start forming a pattern. He might shake it off. He might not label it. But when your presence starts weaving into someone's default thought cycle, it means something inside them has been activated, and activation changes behavior subtly. He lingers slightly longer in conversation. He rereads a message before sending it. He hesitates before responding too quickly. Not because he doesn't care, but because he suddenly does, and that awareness makes him careful. Careful is not indifference. Careful is internal processing. Now here's the part that makes you question yourself. There are days he feels warm, and then there are days he feels distant. And that inconsistency makes you spiral. But inconsistency is often the sign of internal conflict. Because the second thing happening inside him is this: he's trying to measure the risk. When someone starts mattering, it threatens stability. Even if he wants connection. Even if he likes you. Even if he feels the pull. There's a moment where attraction stops being casual and starts feeling consequential. And that's when fear enters quietly. Not fear of you. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. Fear of wanting something he can't fully predict. So some days he leans in. Other days he pulls back just enough to regain his balance. And you feel that. You feel it in the pacing, in the timing, in the slight shift in tone. You think it means he's losing interest. But often it means he's realizing the depth. And depth feels heavier than flirting. Then something else starts happening. You begin to affect his emotional state. He notices that his mood shifts depending on interactions with you. If you're warm, he feels lifted. If you're distant, he feels unsettled. If you're quiet, he wonders why. And the moment your emotional temperature influences his, the dynamic has crossed into something more significant. Because now it's not just attraction, it's attachment activation. He might not call it that, but he'll notice the change. He'll notice that when you take longer to respond, he checks his phone more often. He'll notice that when you laugh with someone else, something small and sharp hits his chest. He won't necessarily show it, but he will feel it. And when someone begins reacting internally to your absence or attention, it means you've started occupying emotional territory. Territory he didn't consciously give away. It just happened. Now here's where it deepens. You're not just on his mind. You're starting to alter his future projections. He imagines scenarios, not full-blown fantasies, but subtle ones. What it would be like if you were at an event with him. How you'd react to something he enjoys. Whether you'd fit into certain parts of his world. This is quiet mental testing. And men don't do that with someone they feel neutral about. Neutral doesn't trigger projection. Projection means possibility. But possibility also means vulnerability, and vulnerability is where tension spikes. Because once he sees potential, he has to decide whether to step toward it or protect himself from it. And this is usually the point where you start feeling him fluctuate. More intensity, then slight retreat, more engagement, then a pause. It's not random. It's regulation. He's trying to manage how much you're affecting him. And here's the part no one tells you. The stronger the effect, the more likely he is to slow down. Not because he doesn't care, but because he does. Intensity without clarity can feel destabilizing. And most people, especially men who are used to emotional independence, don't rush toward destabilization. They approach it cautiously. Now let's talk about the fragile part. Because around this stage, something else begins forming inside him. Ego awareness. He starts wondering what you think of him. Not in a surface way, in a deeper way. Did he say too much? Did he come across too strong? Does she see me as confident or trying too hard? And the moment a man begins questioning how he's perceived by you, it means your opinion carries weight. Weight creates stakes, and stakes create tension. Which brings us to the most delicate shift happening inside him. He begins protecting himself from disappointment, even before anything has gone wrong. Because when someone starts mattering, your brain tries to preempt pain. So he might emotionally brace. He might pull back slightly. He might test your consistency. Not to play games, but to assess safety. He wants to know if this feeling is stable, if it's mutual, if it's something he can lean into without losing control. And here's where you doubt yourself the most. You think, if he really felt something, he'd be all in. But real emotion doesn't always move fast. Sometimes it moves carefully. Sometimes it grows in silence. Sometimes it wrestles internally before it ever shows up externally. Now we reach the irreversible shift. The one I hinted at in the beginning. There's a moment when you stop being just a person he's talking to. and you become a reference point. He starts comparing other interactions to how he feels with you. Other conversations feel flatter. Other women feel less aligned. Other connections feel easier, but less compelling. And once someone becomes your emotional reference point, you can't unsee it. He may try to distract himself. He may try to rationalize. He may even try to convince himself it's not that serious. But the comparison has already been made. And that changes perception permanently. You've moved from optional to significant. Now, significant doesn't mean guaranteed. It doesn't mean he'll suddenly make grand gestures. It doesn't mean timing aligns perfectly. Because reality still exists. He might be carrying baggage. He might be afraid of losing freedom. He might not feel fully ready for something deeper. Emotional maturity plays a role. Timing plays a role. Personal history plays a role. Feelings alone don't force action. But they do create internal shifts. And the shift is this: he can't experience you neutrally anymore. You've altered his emotional landscape, and that's why you feel him in your mind the way you do. Because your nervous system is responding to a real exchange of energy, not fantasy, not delusion, not wishful thinking. Unfinished tension. Mutual activation. Subtle attachment forming in real time. So when you lie awake wondering why he's on your mind again, understand this: you're not crazy. You're not imagining something from nothing. You're picking up on a dynamic that hasn't resolved yet. And the mystery I mentioned at the beginning? The reason he feels different lately. The reason there's a subtle intensity beneath the surface. It's because he knows. On some level. Even if he hasn't said it. Even if he hasn't acted on it. Even if he's still figuring it out. He knows you're not just another interaction. You're a shift. And once someone becomes a shift in your life,